Okay, so part two of the composite room. Having a few technological issues with the recording software, but we're just gonna get on with it. Okay, so here's where we finished up last time. So I'll let me do a few more things. One of the things I wanted to do was light these lights. Okay, now it's actually a really, really, really good quality image, so I can actually zoom in and see them, the actual kind of downlighters themselves. So there's a couple of things I can do here. The first thing I want to do is I actually want to light the light, and then I want to add light coming from the light. But at the moment the light doesn't look like it's turned on, so I'm going to turn the light on. Okay, so I'm going to click on the room. I'm going to zoom in. And this is actually really straightforward, believe it or not. I'm going to click just around the inner part of this where the light bulb is. The feather is too high. I need to bring it down to something like, actually 2. Sorry, this error message is turning up on my other screen. So the feather was too high for the size of the selection that I made. Okay, so that's fine. Now all I want to do with that at the moment is just flood it with white light. So you can see my color choice down here is white. I'm going to change this to paint bucket. I'm going to fill it with white. And it's actually not bad. It's just, it kind of fills it and there's a little bit of a blur on it because of the feather edge. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to copy that selection with Control C and then paste it with Control V. And you can see it there, right? Now, the reason I'm doing this, what I want to do with this little extra piece of light I've made is I'm going to put it into place. And I'm going to go to layer style, outer glow. Okay, now this is set up again from the last time I did this. So the idea with this is what I really want to do is I want to just add a little kind of an outer glow to it, so I can kind of just make it look like the bulb is really, really lighting. And it's difficult to do that when it's part of the other layer, but if I copy it and paste it in, you'll be able to see that it actually works really, really well. And if I zoom back from this, you can see it really does make it look like the light is actually on. Now, the only thing about it is, there's no actual light coming from it, like down to the ground or anything like that, but that's okay. So, to save me having to do this again, I'm just going to call this Spotlight 1. I'm just going to duplicate it out. Duplicate layer, right click, okay. I'm going to drag this one down to here. Now, it's going to be too big, so I have to just zoom in and reduce the size a little, because as they go away, they get smaller. I'm going to put it right there, and then I'm going to duplicate, so that's Spotlight 2. Okay, and I'm going to duplicate that one out, and I'm going to drag that one down here. Again, it's too big, so I'm going to zoom in on that one. Transform and scale. Oh no, that wasn't scale. Here we go. I'm going to bring this one down. And then I'm going to zoom out. Okay, so you'll be able to see now that I can actually turn those lights off by deselecting the layers. See them? Now there's actually still a little bit of light illuminating on that one. That's okay. That was the original one I did. But it's really the outer glow ones that I'm interested in, because they're the ones that really make them look like they're on. Now, as we know, from having done the spotlight in the room, we can recreate kind of a light beam quite easily. But this one here is going to be tricky because it's actually down a corridor, and by default, the light we make will actually bridge in front of this and ruin the effect. So I'm just going to make one of them for starters. So I'm going to make a layer, new layer, and I'm going to call this light beam 1. And I'm going to put this just in front of Spotlight 1. Okay. I'm going to zoom in again. Okay. Now, I'm going to choose my polygon selection tool. I'm going to put a kind of a higher feather on this, as something like 15. And I just want to see how this works. So I'm going to drag down from there. Now, there's going to be a little pin spotlight, so I don't want it to be too wide. You can actually buy these bulbs in everything down to something like 6 degrees of spread, which is tiny. You can actually light a picture with it from across the room and light nothing else. Okay, so I'm going to fill that with white light, like so, and I'm going to go select and deselect, and then I'm going to adjust the opacity on it, like we did before. Now the only thing about it is, because of the layers of the room, the light actually appears to be going off to the right somehow. So I'm just going to go edit, transform, and skew. I'm going to pull the bottom of the light over so that it appears to be shining straight down. Now that's not too bad. That actually kind of looks okay. So rather than make another one, I'm going to duplicate that. I'll call this one Light Beam 2. And I'm going to move it down to here. Now by default, I'm going to have to make it smaller and adjust the location of the beam. So to create the perspective. So I go edit, transform, and perspective. I'm going to bring the beam on this in a little. But I also have to go edit, transform, and scale because it needs to be further down the hallway. So I'm going to press Control and Shift and then drag it up. And then once again, edit, transform, and perspective, and then drag it in because it needs to be a narrower beam and it needs to be further away. So I'm also going to go edit, transform, and skew. I'm going to move it just off to one side like that. So that's two of them. That's not too bad, I suppose. I can adjust. Now the second one is further away and should by default be a little bit more transparent and harder to see. So I don't mind that. So there we go. That's the second one. Third one's going to be tricky because it's down a hallway and this wall is going to have to cut some of it off. But that's okay. So we duplicate Light Beam 2. And we say okay. And I'm going to just double click in here. And I'm going to call this Light Beam 3. I'm trying to keep an eye on the counter for this video because every now and again I look down and the video has stopped recording and I have to go back. So we now have Light Beam 3. I'm going to position it down there. Now it needs to be a little bit fainter, but I also need, as you can see, it's weird because the light's down here down a corridor and yet it appears to be up here in the room. So I need to adjust the spread and beam of the light to make it look like it's down there. So I go edit, transform, and perspective. I'm going to drag it in again like so. Then I'm going to go edit, transform, and scale. I'm going to press Control and Shift and drag it up. Once again, I'll bring the perspective in. And then I go edit, transform, and skew, and I drag the bottom inwards like so. Now what I can do is go to edit, transform, and perspective and drag that out again, except it'll be going in front of, to make it look more realistic like it's in the corridor, but some of it's going to start spreading in front of the wall. So all I have to do at that stage is just drag a rectangular marquee down here, and any of the light that's bleeding in, just delete. Select and deselect. So there you go. So that's the 3 lights in the hallway. Now I can adjust the transparency of them to make them a bit more realistic if I want. I don't want to spend too much time on it because this has already been a hell of an experience doing this as it is, because of the recording keeping on stopping. Okay, we'll click on the second one and we'll bring that down. And then we'll click on the third one, and that's already at 13, so I'm reluctant to bring that anymore. Okay, so let's zoom out and see what that looks like. That's okay. That's all right. That'll do. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to bring in a poster. I'm going to put it on the wall. I might do a table. I'm aware that these videos are getting long, and I've recorded some of them 3 times because of the recorder stopping. So let's bring in the picture. I'm just going to save this. Give it a second to save. See it down here. It's at 99%. It'll say that until it is at 0%. Here we go. Now, File, Open. Now, yeah, in here. Let's grab one of these posters. Sadly, it's Star Wars again. I'm so sorry. But that's okay. So I drag it down and I drag it in, as always. I'm going to bring it up to the top because it has to go onto the wall. And I need to gauge, this is obviously an 8-foot wall, and it's not a 4-foot poster. So I need to just guess what size I want this poster to be. And the other thing I need to do is that I'm probably looking at about 4 or 5 feet for this wall. So I can't just start it over here on the edge, because then it will look weird that it's off center. So what I need to do is position it very far in, so that when I finally do add perspective and distort to it, that it looks like it's in the center. And this is trial and error. Let's try it. Edit, transform and perspective, and we drag it down. Again, we're trying to loosely match the top angle of the picture of the poster with the top angle of the ceiling, and the bottom angle with the floor, loosely. Edit, transform and scale. I'm going to press Control and Shift and drag it in from the right. And I can already see I'd moved too far over into the wall. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to drag it over, and we go again. Edit, transform, perspective. Drag it down. And then edit, transform, scale. Control Shift and drag it in. That's a little bit better. Now it's kind of a little bit unrealistic. Firstly, the nice orange light that's on the wall isn't stretching over the picture, and it really needs to be to look realistic. But I don't really have the time to add another gradient. What I would do is I'd do another one of these gradients and just map it over it. That would probably be the best way. I can also bring the brightness of it. It's kind of, unless I shine a light on that, it's kind of too bright. Now we'll get into levels and curves and everything at a later stage, even though they're not actually required by the course. Levels will give me a bit more control over this, but brightness and contrast will just bring it down a little, right? I don't want to get into levels and curves in this video. It's just, it'll go on and on and on. Now, it doesn't look like it's on the wall because it needs to be kind of mapped into it. Not mapped, kind of blended in some way. But this is going to end up being an extremely long video. Okay, so the next thing I just want to show you is shadow. So I'm just going to go File and Open. And I'm going to try and pick one of these tables, like so, and bring it straight in. Drag it down, bring it in. Now it clearly doesn't belong in that room. Okay. Sorry, little error messages come up. Layer 2. Came in as locked. Okay, so we have it now. Okay, so it's clearly the wrong size and it's way too bright. And there's a number of things we can do with that. The first thing is we're going to just darken it just a little because it's too bright. So this will help us overall just bring it down to the tone of the room. That's not too bad, I suppose. But if we wanted to really make it look like it was in the room, the first thing we need to do is add some shadows to the floor, because if that was there and there was light coming in from the right hand side, it would be casting a shadow under the table. So what we do is over here on the left, you'll see a little kind of lollipop. And the lollipop is the dodge tool, and then the gripping hand is the burn tool. Burn darkens, dodge lightens. So I'm going to click on burn. And look at the settings for burn. So burn will basically darken. We can adjust the size of the tool itself. We can adjust whether the tool affects shadows, midtones, or highlights. And you have to just learn those over time, insofar as when you have a kind of a light colored piece of image, it'll be the highlight. But when you begin to darken it to midtones and it gets to the midtone stage, the light choice will stop working and the midtone will then take over. So you literally have to keep on adjusting from one to the other. So I'm just going to assume that the floor is a midtone, and the exposure is basically how dark the tool is going to be. Now ideally I want the tool to not be too large. I don't want to adjust too much of the floor. Okay, so let's zoom in here. I'm going to choose the room, and I'm just going to show you. Now that's way too dark, and the tool is too small. So I'm going to bring that down, and I'm going to increase the size of the tool. And we're just going to try ever so lightly adding a shadow under the table. And again, it will probably cast a shadow past itself. I'm going to bring this down even lighter, and then make it even larger. Probably a little ambitious. There we go. Okay. Now, the table itself is too bright on the left hand side. Now there's a bit of effort as regards getting this right. So if I was going to name this table, if I click on the, if I select the table, and then again what I want to do is choose the burn tool. The table is very light, so I'm going to choose highlights, and I'm going to choose kind of a medium exposure, about 30 or something like that. And I just want to ever so lightly darken, one side of this, just a little, right? But what I do want to do is go on in and darken the actual legs quite a bit, because the legs should not be that bright on that side. So what I'll need to do is bring the scale of the tool down and probably the exposure up. And I'm just going to try this back side of this leg. Okay, and pretty much the back side of this one. And this one. Now, all under here should be in shadow for the simple reason that there's no light shining in here. There's none. There'll be a little bit on the front of that leg, but none on the back. And there'll be none on the back of that one. Now let's just zoom out and have a look at it and see. Okay. It's not too bad. It would obviously be better. I think the overall table itself might need to be lightened just ever so slightly. But definitely, let me just increase the size of that. Definitely darkening one side of it helps. And having the shadows underneath on the floor absolutely help. Now the only thing about it is where the legs are actually touching the ground needs to be fixed, because they're too clean. There isn't enough going on around them. So if I click on the burn tool again and I go on down to mid-tones and I just try and just put a little bit of shadow just where they're touching the ground, because generally speaking they will cast a shadow immediately where they are. Now let's go back one, because the one I did here wasn't great. It needs to be on this side. Better. Oh no. This one turned out well. Okay, I'll come back out from there. Okay, so you kind of get the idea. So if I was to undo all of the effects that I had there, let me just go back up to the history tool and I go above all the burns. That's what it looked like. Okay, so it clearly just doesn't look like it belongs. But by playing around with it, that's what I was kind of able to achieve. Now, the more you do this, the better it will get, right? The more you play around with it. So, and definitely if you put something on top of that table, it would look more realistic. But you can see there just by a couple of seconds, it went from just being white to having it definitely looks like it has more of a presence in the room. And it's trial and error with these things. It depends on the image, it depends on the light, it depends on a load of things. So a lot of you have already been doing this, and I've seen that you've got sofas in there, and tables and lamps and trees and everything like that. If you know how to use the burn tool, so that's the burn tool. So the dodge tool does the exact opposite. It actually just lightens things. So if I was to choose the poster, like so, just to show you, right? And I zoomed in on the poster, and I wanted to lighten a part of it. Let's say Harrison Ford's hair. Now let me just make sure I have that poster selected. Go to the layer tool. Okay, so the poster is selected. I'm going to click on the dodge tool. I want to adjust shadows as right, exposure 47, and I want to make the tool a bit bigger. So watch what it does. I can give Harrison Ford blonde hair. You kind of get the idea. Depending what I do and how I do it, it will basically just lighten things. Now again, if I was to go into history and undo the dodge tool, watch his hair. Oh, too far. So there's his dark hair. There's his light hair. Okay, you know what I mean. You spend a little more time on it, it will be fine. Okay, this is 18 minutes, so I'm going to call a halt to this. Okay, so what did we do? We cut out the windows, put in transparent glass, and we threw a cityscape in behind. We added a projector, we added a screen, we added light. We put lights, we illuminated the 3 lights in the hallway, and we put light beams coming down from them. We added a poster onto the wall, which does need a little bit more work because there was nice orange light on that wall from the original image, and now the poster's in front of it. So what we probably need to do is try and reproduce that over the picture, over the poster, so it would look realistic. And then we can add all sorts of other things. You could put a table in there, up down near the back, down around here, and you could kind of add a reflection into the glass, and that would kind of look cool in some way. Okay, listen, I'm going to call it a day because the last one was quite long and this one is quite long too, and it is 1:05 in the morning, so we're going to call an end to it. Hopefully that's helped people. the plan is to have all of these done by next week because I've got to move on to other things. So I hope that helped you.